The sun was just beginning to rise over the training base when the message spread. It did not move fast, but it moved with weight. Something serious was about to happen. Soldiers noticed senior officers arriving earlier than usual. Vehicles stopped near the main range. Guards doubled their checks. Even those who had served for years could feel it in the air. This was not routine. This was not training as usual. By mid-morning, units were ordered to assemble. Lines formed across the open ground. Boots hit the dirt in steady rhythm. No one spoke more than necessary. A few quiet guesses passed between close friends, but no one knew the truth. When the general arrived, all sound stopped. He was known for discipline and clarity. He did not waste words. When he came personally, it meant the matter was important. He stepped forward and looked over the formation. His eyes moved slowly, not searching for faces, but measuring readiness. He spoke clearly so every person could hear. He said intelligence had revealed a rare and dangerous scenario, one that demanded absolute accuracy. One mistake would cost lives. This was not about speed or strength. This was about precision and control. Only one soldier was qualified to respond. He paused, then said he was calling for the Army's top marksman. A quiet murmur ran through the formation. Most soldiers already pictured who would step forward. They imagined someone loud, confident, covered in medals, with a reputation known across the base. Some even turned their heads slightly, expecting movement from certain directions. But nothing happened. The general waited. Seconds passed. The silence became heavy. Then, from near the back of the formation, a single figure moved. It was a woman. She stepped forward without rushing. Her posture was straight, her movements controlled. She did not look around. She did not react to the sudden attention. Her uniform was clean but plain. No extra markings, no signs meant to impress. Many soldiers frowned, trying to place her. Some realized they had seen her before, but only in passing. Others had never noticed her at all. The general's expression changed. Not anger, not approval, just surprise. He studied her for a moment longer than expected. The silence stretched again. Around her, reactions spread quietly. A few raised eyebrows, some disbelief, a few almost smiles that carried doubt. No one spoke, but the question hung clearly in the air. Why her? She stopped several steps from the front and stood at attention, calm, still, waiting. The general finally spoke, asking her to confirm her role. Her voice was steady and low when she answered. No confidence pushed forward. No fear held it back. Just fact. The general nodded slowly, but his pause showed hesitation. He asked if she understood what was being requested. She said yes. He asked if she was prepared. She said she was. Behind them, the officers exchanged brief glances. This was not what they expected. Some had reviewed records for years and never once seen her name rise to the top. Others remembered quiet reports that never stayed long on desks before being locked away. The general did not dismiss her, but he did not immediately accept her either. He said the situation was critical. He said the margin for error was nearly zero. He said this was not a test for appearances. She did not interrupt. She did not defend herself. She listened, eyes forward. Finally, the general ordered her to remain. He dismissed the rest of the formation, but instructed key officers to stay. As soldiers marched away, many looked back. Curiosity replaced doubt. Something unusual was unfolding. As the area cleared, the range felt larger and quieter. The wind moved across the field, brushing against flags and equipment. The woman stood exactly where she had been told, hands steady, breathing slow. One officer asked quietly why she had stepped forward. The question was not unkind, but it carried disbelief. She answered simply that she was qualified. Nothing more. Another officer mentioned that several highly ranked marksmen were available, men with public records and confirmed scores. She replied that she was aware. Her tone did not change. The general watched closely. He had seen many soldiers over the years. He knew confidence could be loud or silent. He also knew that silence sometimes hid the most dangerous skill. He ordered her file to be brought immediately as an aide left to retrieve it. The general studied her stance. Not rigid, but ready. She did not shift her weight. She did not scan the area. She remained present without tension. Minutes later, the file arrived. It was thinner than expected. No long list of awards. No public recognition. But what was there was precise. Perfect scores. Special evaluations. Notes marked restricted. Dates that lined up with operations that were never discussed openly. The general's eyes narrowed slightly as he read. He said nothing. The officers leaned in closer. One pointed to a section and whispered. Another looked up at her again, this time with less doubt. The general closed the file and looked at her once more. He asked when she last fired under live conditions. She gave a date and location. The place was familiar to him. The mission was one he remembered clearly, even if he had never known who was responsible for its success. The air shifted. Still, he did not commit. He said there would be a preliminary evaluation, not for show, not for ego, just proof. He said if she failed even once, she would be dismissed without discussion. She accepted without hesitation. As preparations began, those present realized something else. She was not nervous. She was not eager. She was simply ready. Whatever had brought her here had not been chance. It had been patience. The general turned away briefly, looking out over the range. He understood then that this moment was not just about a shot. It was about how many others like her might have stood unnoticed, carrying skill without recognition. Behind him, the woman waited, quiet and steady, as she had learned to do for most of her career. This was not her first moment under pressure. It was simply the first time that pressure had a face, and as the first target was prepared in the distance, even the wind seemed to slow, as if aware that something rare was about to be revealed. The morning was fading into a brighter day, but the base remained quiet in the area where the evaluation would take place. The woman stood alone for a moment, observing the empty field before her. It was not fear or hesitation she felt. She thought about the journey that had brought her to this point. Few knew her story, and that was exactly how she had chosen it. She had not grown up with privilege. Her childhood had been ordinary in some ways and demanding in others. Her parents taught her discipline and the value of responsibility early, not as orders, but as lessons in life. Every mistake carried weight, and every success was earned without applause. She learned to be precise in small tasks, whether repairing equipment, climbing uneven terrain, or handling tools. That early training built the foundation of her patience and focus, skills no one could measure at first glance. When she joined the military, she was quiet among her peers. She did not seek attention, but she noticed everything. She studied movements, listened to the advice of instructors, and paid attention to the smallest detail in exercises. Many overlooked her because she did not speak out, did not boast, and often worked alone. But she learned quickly, faster than most, and performed with consistency few could match. Her early days in training were challenging. She faced subtle skepticism. Instructors sometimes questioned her abilities. Soldiers assumed she would fail physical tests, and others doubted her decision-making. That did not stop her. Each time a challenge came, she approached it methodically, quietly, and with determination. Over time, her results spoke louder than words. She broke records on the range, but she never celebrated. She completed exercises flawlessly, but she rarely drew attention to herself. The recognition she received was mostly private, in confidential evaluations, for missions that were not publicized. There were days she had returned late from exercises, tired and hungry, only to stay behind to check equipment and review every step she had taken. Sometimes she made small improvements, adjustments that no one would notice, but that made a difference in real situations. Others called her meticulous. She preferred the word ready. Ready meant that when the moment came, she would not hesitate. Ready meant that she could act when others faltered. During missions that were classified or sensitive, her skill was crucial. She saved lives in ways that were never announced. Sometimes a target was neutralized without anyone outside her unit knowing. Sometimes she provided cover that allowed others to complete objectives successfully. The reports existed, but they were hidden. Her success was invisible, even as it shaped outcomes that mattered. Her quiet reputation had a purpose. She had learned early that ego could be a liability. Confidence was necessary, but arrogance was dangerous. She measured her confidence against facts, not recognition. In her view, a mission completed well was its own reward. Praise was secondary. Survival, success, and precision were what counted. Those principles had carried her through years of training, operations, and evaluation exercises. Returning to the present, she remembered her first time handling a long-range rifle under live conditions. She had been nervous, though no one would have guessed it. Her hands shook slightly at first, but she corrected her stance, her breathing, and her focus. She measured every variable: wind, distance, angle. She took her shot, and it landed exactly as planned. That single moment reinforced a truth she had learned repeatedly: control, preparation. And patience mattered more than appearance. Over the years, she refined her approach. She learned to stay calm under noise, under stress, and under scrutiny. She learned to read conditions, anticipate changes, and adapt without hesitation. Other soldiers relied on instinct and experience. She relied on study, calculation, and repetition. In many ways, her method was quieter, but no less effective. It became her signature. While others were visible, she was invisible in her skill. While others acted for recognition, she acted for results. Back on the base, she took a slow breath and adjusted her gear. Every movement was intentional. She reviewed her mental checklist one last time. Rifle secured, scope aligned, safety confirmed. Her focus was absolute. The general had requested proof, and this was not the time for hesitation. She had been ready for this her entire career, even if no one had called her to this moment before. Memories of moments where she had succeeded quietly ran through her mind. Times when she had corrected a course, saved a teammate, or neutralized a threat without fanfare. Every memory reinforced her confidence. She understood that the evaluation would not just test her aim, but her ability to remain calm and precise under observation. Observation could be distracting, but it was also part of the challenge. She remembered a training session where the wind shifted unexpectedly. Most soldiers struggled, frustrated by changing conditions. She adjusted smoothly, recalculated, and completed the target. Others looked at her in surprise. They did not ask how she did it, and she did not explain. She only knew that preparation allowed her to remain steady. In the military, steadiness could make the difference between success and failure. Life and death. Another memory returned. Her first deployment on a mission that demanded silent precision. She had been one of the few allowed to participate because her skill was trusted, but her reputation was not widely known. She had acted decisively, neutralized threats, and returned without incident. Few knew her role, yet the mission had succeeded fully. The lessons she carried from that experience were etched into her approach. Every detail mattered, no noise could disturb focus, and patience could achieve what force could not. She thought about her peers. Many had been decorated, some loudly, some quietly. She had learned from all of them. She had seen mistakes made in haste, errors born of distraction, and sometimes confidence misplaced. Those observations had shaped her own approach. She trusted skill over recognition. She trusted preparation over chance. She trusted discipline over ego. Now, standing alone on the range, she realized the culmination of all those years had brought her here. The general had asked for the top marksman. He had not expected her, and that was exactly the point. She had prepared quietly, consistently, and completely. She had trained for moments when her name would be invisible, and now she stood where it finally mattered. The target was placed at a long distance. Equipment was checked. Conditions were confirmed. Other soldiers observed from behind safety lines, curious, skeptical, and slightly tense. The general moved slowly, observing her stance, her preparation, her calm demeanor. The officers whispered among themselves. Some doubted, some remembered quiet reports, some simply waited. She lifted the rifle, checked alignment, and breathed steadily. Her mind was clear, her body was ready. Every skill she had honed over years, every lesson learned, every mission, silently completed, all of it was now focused on this moment. The general's gaze met hers briefly, and she did not flinch. She did not need to impress. She needed to perform. That was her understanding of excellence. The wind shifted again, subtly. She noticed immediately, adjusted her aim, recalculated distance and trajectory. It was not a dramatic movement. It was precise, small, controlled. She took the shot. The target reacted exactly as intended. A quiet murmur ran through the observing officers. The general nodded slightly. Not yet approval, but recognition. She had not rushed. She had not hesitated. And she had delivered. The rest of the evaluation would come. But the first proof was undeniable. She was ready. Even as the next steps were prepared, she returned to a calm stance. She did not smile. She did not relax fully. She stayed present. For her, preparation was continuous. Success depended not on applause, but on readiness. And now, every eye on the range would see what she had carried quietly all her life. Skill, patience, and focus that could not be ignored. The morning had grown brighter, but the tension over the range remained thick. Observers could sense that something extraordinary was unfolding. The woman stood at her station, her rifle ready, her mind quiet but fully alert. Around her, the officers whispered softly, trying to understand what they were witnessing. The general, silent for the moment, seemed to be weighing every detail carefully, his gaze fixed on her movements. The evaluation had now shifted into the next stage. This was not just about hitting stationary targets at a distance. It was about precision under pressure, adapting to changing conditions, and demonstrating the kind of calm decision-making that could determine life or death in a real mission. The scenario was designed to challenge not just skill, but judgment and focus. As the target mechanisms were adjusted, she studied each angle, each potential complication. Wind readings were double-checked. Range calculations were confirmed. Everything was methodical, nothing left to chance. She had learned long ago that success was built on preparation and observation, not on luck or speed. The officers noticed the way she worked silently, without hesitation or need for recognition. Some of them had spent years in the military, but few had seen this kind of methodical focus. The first moving target appeared downrange, small and difficult. It required precise timing, steady breathing, and exact calculation of distance and trajectory. Many of the observers expected hesitation, but she responded with calm and certainty. She adjusted her scope, aligned her shot, and released. The target was hit exactly where intended. There was no flinch, no unnecessary movement, no show of pride. Just perfect execution. The general's expression remained unreadable, but those closest could sense a subtle acknowledgement. He had seen talent before, but the way she combined preparation, patience, and execution was unusual. This was more than skill. It was discipline refined over years of experience that few had witnessed. The officers whispered among themselves, noting quietly the precision and calm that marked every movement. Next came a series of moving targets, each one simulating more complex conditions. Some moved erratically, others appeared unexpectedly. Each required quick calculation, adjustment, and flawless timing. Observers leaned forward instinctively, caught up in the unfolding display. The woman worked methodically, measuring, adjusting, and executing each shot with quiet confidence. There was no rush, no unnecessary motion, no hint of doubt. A subtle shift in the wind added difficulty to one of the longer shots. Many soldiers would have hesitated, taken the safe approach, or relied on instinct alone. She paused, adjusted. For the subtle change, recalculated distance and trajectory, and fired. Again, perfect execution. Observers exchanged glances, some silently impressed, others still in disbelief that this quiet figure could manage such skill without hesitation. The evaluation now included simulated emergency scenarios. Targets appeared and disappeared quickly. The timing required rapid assessment and immediate execution. Her hands moved deliberately, but swiftly. Each shot was placed with precision. The officers noted that even under pressure, she maintained control, focus, and accuracy. The difference was clear. Where others might panic or rush, she remained steady, thinking through each action with calm intent. During a pause between scenarios, the general moved closer. He spoke softly, asking questions not about the results, but about her process. She explained in brief, simple terms: observation first, adjustment second, execution last. No exaggeration, no unnecessary detail. Just facts. The general nodded slightly, as if understanding that her confidence was rooted not in ego, but in preparation. The next target scenario was the most difficult yet. It required not only skill, but judgment. The conditions were unpredictable. Targets moved at varying speeds and distances. Success depended on more than hitting the mark. It required deciding when to act, when to wait, and when to anticipate change. Many observers held their breath, aware that mistakes could be revealing. She studied the first target carefully. Unlike previous rounds, this one required anticipating movement, predicting patterns, and making split-second decisions. She adjusted her position, observed the subtle cues of the target's movement, and calculated the timing. She released the first shot, perfect. Then she adjusted for the next, again precise. With each action, the observers could see that her focus was unwavering. She did not react to whispers or the occasional shuffle of feet behind her. She was fully present, entirely focused on her task. One officer whispered to another that he had never seen anyone maintain such calm under this level of scrutiny. Another noted the subtle adjustments she made, the way she measured wind, distance, and timing simultaneously. Even those who had trained elite soldiers for years could not recall seeing someone combine judgment and skill in this quiet but commanding manner. The scenario intensified. Multiple targets appeared simultaneously. Each one required evaluation, timing, and precise execution. Any miscalculation could mean failure. She worked systematically, prioritizing each target, calculating each angle, and adjusting for conditions. Every shot was deliberate, measured, and perfect. Her consistency under pressure was remarkable. Observers were drawn into the rhythm of her actions, captivated by the seamless blend of control, focus, and skill. The general watched without interruption. He had seen countless soldiers in his career, some decorated and praised, others quietly competent. But the way she handled this complex, high-pressure scenario was unlike anything he had observed. Her preparation, her patience, and her calm confidence set her apart. She was not performing for recognition. She was performing because she was ready and because she knew the work mattered. As the scenario reached its peak difficulty, she paused for only a fraction of a second before taking her next series of shots. Observers noticed that even her brief pause was purposeful, not hesitation. She recalculated, adjusted, and executed flawlessly. The result was not luck. It was discipline, honed through years of silent training and meticulous preparation. Finally, the last target appeared at an extreme distance, under challenging wind conditions. Most would have hesitated, uncertain of timing and trajectory. She stood calmly, measured the variables, and released her shot. The target reacted exactly as intended. A quiet murmur passed through the officers, a mix of respect and disbelief. The general's eyes narrowed, a subtle acknowledgement of skill that could not be ignored. The woman lowered her rifle and stood at ease, but her focus did not waver. She remained attentive, ready for whatever came next. Observers whispered quietly among themselves, noting her ability to maintain composure under the most challenging conditions. Some recalled past missions where results had depended on such discipline. Others realized that they had underestimated her based on appearances alone. The general stepped forward, his expression still controlled, but showing the beginnings of approval. He addressed the officers briefly, emphasizing that skill, discipline, and calm judgment were as important as speed and visibility. He did not offer applause or fanfare. That was not how she worked. But his acknowledgement carried weight, and the officers understood that her performance had set a new standard. As she stood ready for the final assessment, she reflected briefly on the journey that had led her here. Each silent hour of training, each unnoticed success, each calculated adjustment, all of it had prepared her for this moment. She did not seek recognition, but she had earned it in ways that mattered. The challenge ahead would test more than skill alone. It would test judgment, patience, and the ability to remain fully present under observation. Even as the next stage was set up, the atmosphere on the range had shifted. Where skepticism had once existed, respect was quietly growing. Observers realized that this was not just a test of marksmanship. It was a demonstration of focus, preparation, and control. It was a reminder that quiet skill could surpass noise and recognition, that readiness and patience often mattered more than visibility. She adjusted her stance once more, checked her rifle, and prepared for the next scenario. Each action was deliberate, precise, and controlled. Every observer knew they were witnessing something rare, skill that combined discipline, focus, and judgment in a way that could not be ignored. The evaluation continued, but the impression she had left would remain long after the day ended. A quiet testament to years of preparation and silent excellence. The afternoon sun cast long shadows over the range, but the tension remained. The officers and soldiers who had stayed were silent now, their attention fixed on the woman. She had already demonstrated skill that few could match, yet the final stage of the evaluation demanded more. This was no longer about simple precision or calculated adjustments. This was about judgment under extreme conditions. The final scenario was set. Targets would appear unpredictably, some moving quickly, others hidden initially and revealed suddenly. Each shot would test not only aim, but decision-making. Accuracy alone was not enough. Timing, patience, and the ability to anticipate change would determine success. The general gave a quiet signal, and the scenario began. The first target moved unpredictably. Many would have hesitated, unsure of the optimal moment. She watched carefully, reading subtle signs of movement and trajectory. She adjusted her stance and scope, waited for the exact moment, and fired. Perfect. The next sequence was even more complex. Several targets appeared simultaneously at varying distances. She paused only briefly, assessing priorities. She made rapid calculations in her mind, considering which target required immediate action and which could wait. Then she fired one shot at a time, each one precise. The officers exchanged silent glances. This was not luck. It was methodical, controlled skill. The wind shifted unexpectedly. Observers expected hesitation, but she reacted immediately. Subtle adjustment to aim, a careful recalibration, and the next shot hit perfectly. Even under stress, her calm and focus did not waver. Every observer realized that this was more than marksmanship. It was mastery of judgment, patience, and control. The general stepped closer, observing her every movement. He had seen elite soldiers before, but few demonstrated such consistency and calm. He watched her measure, adjust, and execute. Each action was deliberate, precise, and effective. The discipline behind every movement was evident, and the quiet confidence she displayed was striking. Another target appeared, smaller and faster, requiring split-second timing. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, not from uncertainty, but to ensure the shot would be exact. Then she fired, and the target reacted as intended. Observers whispered softly, impressed by the way she handled the situation. It was a demonstration of skill and experience that few had witnessed. The scenario continued to escalate. Hidden targets, moving obstacles, and rapidly changing conditions tested not only her aim, but her ability to think and adapt instantly. She worked methodically, each shot carefully measured, each adjustment precise. Observers noticed that she did not rush, did not flinch, and did not allow pressure to affect her performance. The combination of focus, patience, and skill was remarkable. One officer remarked quietly that he had never seen such calm under pressure. Another noted the subtle ways she adjusted for wind and distance. Even experienced instructors realized that her approach was different from any they had trained or observed. It was not flashy, but it was flawless. The final phase of the scenario required simultaneous evaluation of multiple variables. Distance, speed, wind, and timing all had to be calculated at once. Many soldiers might have become overwhelmed. She observed quietly, calculated quickly, and executed perfectly. Each shot was deliberate, each movement controlled. Her calm precision impressed even the most skeptical observers. The general finally spoke, acknowledging that the evaluation had pushed her to the limits. He did not offer applause or fanfare, but his approval was clear in the way he observed her and in the subtle nod of his head. He understood that her skill was rare, and that her quiet confidence had carried her through the most difficult situations. She remained composed, standing at ease, but fully attentive. Observers realized that this was not just a test of marksmanship, but a demonstration of her experience, discipline, and judgment. Each adjustment, each calculation, and each shot reflected years of preparation and practice that had gone unnoticed until now. The scenario concluded with the final target, successfully engaged. She had completed the evaluation flawlessly. The officers looked at each other, some still whispering, others silent with respect. The general turned to her and acknowledged the accomplishment, not with words of praise, but with a gesture that conveyed recognition and trust. He understood that true excellence did not need fanfare. The observers saw what they had not expected. A quiet soldier, underestimated and overlooked, had proven herself beyond doubt. Her skill, patience, and calm under pressure had surpassed all expectations. The general signaled the end of the evaluation, and the officers began to take notes, understanding the significance of what they had witnessed. Even as the crowd dispersed, the impression she left remained. She had demonstrated that excellence often comes in silence, that preparation and patience can outweigh visibility, and that true skill is revealed not in noise or recognition, but in performance under pressure. The general knew that her abilities could not be ignored in future operations. and he made a mental note to ensure she was considered for assignments that matched her capability. She lowered her rifle and stood quietly, her focus intact. There was no celebration, no display of pride, but the acknowledgement from the general and the officers was enough. This moment marked the recognition of skill earned over years, quietly and consistently. She had proved not just her marksmanship, but her readiness, patience, and judgment, qualities that were essential for any mission. As the sun began to lower in the sky, she packed her equipment methodically, leaving nothing to chance. Observers slowly left the range, still processing what they had seen. The general remained for a moment, reflecting on the demonstration. He understood that her skill was exceptional, and that her quiet approach had been underestimated for too long. This day would remain in the memory of all who witnessed it. The woman who had always worked silently had stepped forward when called, proving that readiness, discipline, and focus were more important than recognition. She had shown that true excellence often comes quietly, and that those who prepare diligently and perform flawlessly under the highest pressure. As she walked back to her quarters, her posture remained steady, her steps measured. She had not sought attention, and she had not received applause. But she had proven herself in the most important way possible. The general had seen her capability, the officers had witnessed her skill, and the lessons of patience, focus, and preparation were evident to all who had watched. She had taken the call, stepped forward, and completed the task flawlessly, leaving a quiet mark that would not be forgotten. The day was drawing to a close, and the range was quiet, except for the subtle sounds of wind and equipment being packed away. The evaluation had concluded, but the significance of what had taken place was still settling over those present. The woman stood quietly at the center, her rifle cleaned and secured, her uniform straight and clean. There was no fanfare, no celebration, just the calm presence of someone who had done exactly what was required. The general approached her slowly, his eyes steady and thoughtful. He had spent decades in the military, seen countless soldiers rise and fall, and witnessed many moments of bravery and skill. Yet today, he had observed something rare. Not just precision or talent, but a combination of focus, patience, and judgment that could not be taught or forced. It came from experience, preparation, and an unwavering commitment to readiness. He addressed her directly, his voice quiet but firm. He did not offer praise in the traditional sense. There was no clapping, no medals in hand, no words of ceremony. Instead, there was acknowledgement, the kind that carries weight in the military, trust and recognition of capability. He spoke of future assignments, opportunities where her skill would be critical, and responsibilities that matched her ability. She listened attentively, absorbing the weight of his words without reaction. For her, the work was never about recognition. It was about doing the job correctly and reliably. The officers around them began to take note. Some had witnessed many elite soldiers perform under pressure, but few had displayed such consistent control and judgment. They whispered among themselves, acknowledging the rare combination of skill and calm she had demonstrated. Even those who had doubted her earlier now understood that she was extraordinary in her discipline, focus, and readiness. As the group dispersed, soldiers returned to their duties, and the range began to empty. Yet the memory of what had occurred lingered. Observers reflected on the lesson that skill often goes unnoticed, that true talent does not always announce itself, and that quiet competence can surpass visible effort. She had proven that recognition is not necessary for excellence, but acknowledgement of capability, even quiet, is meaningful. Later, as she walked back through the base, she passed other soldiers who nodded quietly in respect. Some had trained alongside her for years, but had never fully understood the depth of her skill. Now, after witnessing her performance, they had a new perspective. Respect does not always require words. It can be earned in silence and seen in action. She reflected briefly on her journey. From early days of training, through countless exercises and classified missions, she had relied on preparation and discipline rather than visibility or applause. Each success had been earned quietly, each challenge met with patience and focus. The culmination of those years had brought her to this day, where her skill was tested, observed, and finally acknowledged by those whose opinions mattered most in her world. Her focus did not waver, even as she returned to her quarters. The day's events had been significant, but the work was never finished. She reviewed her equipment mentally, considered what could be improved, and reflected on the lessons learned from the evaluation. This was her habit, her approach: constant preparation, quiet reflection, and continuous improvement. Success was not an endpoint, but a process. And she knew that every opportunity carried the potential to learn, refine, and perform better. That evening, as the sun set and the base grew quiet, the general convened a brief meeting with the senior officers. He discussed what they had witnessed, emphasizing the importance of recognizing quiet talent, of not underestimating individuals based on appearances, and of assigning responsibility according to skill rather than reputation alone. The woman's performance had become an example, a lesson in discipline, focus, and judgment. The impact was subtle, but enduring. Back in her quarters, she prepared for the next day with the same meticulous attention she had always maintained. Meals were simple, rest was purposeful, and her mind reviewed every detail of the day. She thought not of recognition, but of readiness. She knew that any future mission, exercise, or challenge could demand the same focus and precision she had demonstrated today. Her preparation would never end, because excellence is a continuous effort. Sleep came, but even then, her mind stayed active in quiet reflection. Training, experience, and discipline had shaped her into the soldier she had become. The evaluation had confirmed her ability, but she knew that the real test was in every day that followed, in every operation and mission where her skill could make a difference. She had proven herself in one scenario, but her commitment to readiness was lifelong. The next morning, she awoke with purpose. The recognition she had received yesterday was not her goal. The work itself was the priority. She prepared for routine exercises, equipment checks, and potential assignments. Her calm demeanor and focus were consistent, demonstrating that her excellence was not situational, but inherent to her approach to the military and her responsibilities. As she moved through the base, she noticed that colleagues and superiors alike regarded her with a quiet respect. Some spoke briefly, acknowledging her performance. Others simply observed, understanding the level of skill she possessed. She responded with the same calm and measured presence she always maintained. There was no need for words to define her capabilities. Her actions had already spoken. Throughout the following weeks, her role expanded. The general assigned her to specialized operations, where her judgment, precision, and calm under pressure were critical. She continued to operate quietly, never seeking attention or recognition, but consistently delivering results that confirmed her skill. Every mission, every assignment reinforced the principle that excellence is often quiet, patient, and disciplined. Her story, though not widely known outside the base, became an important example internally. Training programs began to emphasize not only visible talent, but also quiet, consistent skill. Leaders recognized the importance of preparation, patience, and judgment alongside traditional measures of ability. Her performance became a benchmark, a lesson in the value of discipline and the power of silent capability. Even months later, officers and soldiers would recall the evaluation, discussing how a quiet figure, underestimated and overlooked, had demonstrated mastery under pressure. It became a narrative that reminded everyone that skill is not always obvious. that true excellence often works in silence, and that readiness and patience are as critical as recognition and reputation. The woman continued her work without fanfare. Each day was approached with the same calm focus, the same dedication to preparation and precision. She understood that her recognition was less important than her performance. Her ability to act effectively when required, to maintain focus under pressure, and to deliver results quietly and consistently defined her contribution to the mission. The general, reflecting on her performance, understood that she represented the highest standards of military discipline and skill. Her ability to remain calm, focused, and precise under extreme scrutiny was exceptional. He ensured that she was placed in roles that matched her abilities, knowing that her contributions could make a significant difference in critical operations. Her presence became a quiet force on the base. She influenced others not through words or displays of ego, but through consistent performance, calm judgment, and preparation. Soldiers began to understand that excellence does not always announce itself, that patience and skill often carry more weight than visibility, and that the most important contributions can be those made quietly but effectively. As the weeks turned into months, the woman continued to exemplify quiet strength and mastery. The evaluation remained a benchmark, a story whispered among officers and soldiers as an example of focus, discipline, and judgment. She had stepped forward when called, proven herself under scrutiny, and left a lasting impression without seeking recognition. Her work, her skill, and her presence spoke volumes quietly, but unmistakably. The day she had been called as the top marksman would be remembered not for applause or medals, but for what it revealed about preparation, discipline, and the power of quiet excellence. She had shown that readiness is earned through dedication, and that true skill is measured not by recognition, but by the ability to perform under pressure. She had proven herself, and in doing so, had set an example that would quietly shape standards for years to come.